Mario is one of, if not the biggest franchises in all of gaming. From the classic Mario platformers like Super Mario World and Super Mario 64, to the Mario Kart series of games like Mario Kart Double Dash and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The Mario franchise has so much inside of it, which of course leads to some of the games in the franchise being really obscure. From sequels of games you never knew existed to one completely unreleased game that you can literally play and complete right now, we've got a lot in store for you today. So hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and let's talk about the most obscure but official Mario games. Look, we're not going to be talking about every obscure Mario game, so if you're looking for a few that I'm not going to mention throughout this video, here's a few quickfire interesting ones. There's Hotel Mario, Undaki 30 Same Game, Captain Rainbow, Fortune Street, Itadaki Street DS, Picross MP, Wrecking Crew 98, the Atari/ColecoVision/Intellivision games, Famicom Grand Prix, all the variations of NES Golf, Mario Bros Returns, Yoshino Cookie Karapan Oven D Cookie, the Mario Artist series, and All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. Oh wait, so we are talking about this one? All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. Is an altered version of Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, using levels from Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and Versus Super Mario Bros., along with replacing several of the enemies with actors from the classic Japanese late-night radio show known as All Night Nippon, and was one of the many things created between Nintendo and Fuji Television's long-lasting partnership with another. Nintendo joins Fuji TV commercial boycott amid sex scandal. Oh. All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. Only had 3,040 copies made, and yes, one of them was in my hand earlier, with 2,000 of these copies being given away in a lottery, with the another 1,000 being sold in Tokyo. Not everyone who wanted a copy got a copy, but you're not really missing that much. It's, as I said, just Super Mario Bros., Lost Levels, and Versus, which I guess is an obscure arcade game, all thrown into one. But of course, Super Mario Bros., Lost Levels, and Versus weren't the only versions of the original Super Mario Bros. There was also the 1988 Game & Watch version. Okay, yes, that's a version of it, but there's a far more interesting version. Super Mario Bros. Special. I've spoken about Super Mario Bros. Special before, but if you haven't seen that, I'll sum it up for you really quickly. Super Mario Bros. Special was originally developed as a PC version of Super Mario Bros. From the NES for Japanese home computers developed by Hudson Soft, but they ended up realizing that developing a straight port would be way too hard, so they created their own game that practically works as a sequel to the original Super Mario Bros. And you know what? It works! It's a fantastic sequel. It's just so much fun! If you played the 30th anniversary ROM hack of the original Super Mario Bros., that fixes all the problems from the original PC version of the game. The original PC version of the game, on the other hand? Oh, it's not good. Okay, so it's not terrible. It has a good basis. That's what we see in the ROM hack version. But the original version is just hard to play. You'll begin playing the game thinking, oh, this isn't so bad, it just loads the screens a bit weirdly. But then you start to realize you've already spent 4 minutes playing World 1-1 because the levels are really long for some reason. So I think if you actually want to play Super Mario Bros. Special, just play the ROM hack. It's like 50 million times better. After going through all of these, we finally got Super Mario Bros. 2, the American one, the one that was originally Doki Doki Panic, a game made as a part of that everlasting partnership that will never ever end between Nintendo and Fuji Television, which eventually released in Japan as Super Mario USA. But we're not here to talk about Super Mario USA. We're here to talk about the sequel to Super Mario USA, BS Super Mario USA. The hell did Super Mario USA do to you? No, it's BS Super Mario USA. Yeah, BS Super Mario USA. What the hell did it do to you? Oh, shut up, John. BS Super Mario USA is a game that was only available for a limited time on the Satellaview for the Japanese version of the Super Nintendo, the Super Famicom. Every game was sent out at a limited time for you to play, and had radio quality audio alongside it, telling a story through the radio host telling you what was going on. BS Super Mario USA follows Mario and his friends thinking that Subcon, the place from the original Super Mario Bros. 2, was just a dream, and move on with their lives. But then they find out that it isn't, and Wart returns to Subcon. You then play through the entirety of Super Mario Bros. 2 again. Yippee! Basically, BS Super Mario USA is just Super Mario Bros. 2 from Super Mario All-Stars, but again, it's not got that much original stuff going on. You just switch characters randomly throughout gameplay, but it's, I guess, a unique way to play the games again. BS Super Mario USA famously is a Japanese exclusive game, but you know what else is a Japanese exclusive game? Mario and Wario! Mario and Wario is a puzzle game made for the Super Famicom that makes use of the SNES mouse, and this game is so much fun. You play as a little fairy trying to get a Mario character from the beginning of the puzzle to the end, sort of similar to those mini Mario games that they went on to make for like the 3DS and Wii U, but this one actually has some sauce. And luckily for you, the game is completely in English. Yeah, so despite the fact it was literally made for Japan only, it's just in English and you can check it out. It's a lot of fun, and there is a ROM hack out there that removes the SNES mouse functionality if you're looking to play it with a controller. It's a hell of a lot of fun, and it's really a hidden gem. But Wario, the second half of Mario and Wario, has he had any obscure games in the past? Has he ever had some sort of ongoing franchise with one game being stuck on some random console that not many people have? Are we really gonna talk about the Virtual Boy? Yes, got it. Luigi says that we're only going to talk about the Virtual Boy if you hit the subscribe button. The Virtual Boy had Virtual Boy Wario Land, the second game in the Wario Land series, and the one that came out after Wario Land 1, but before Wario Land 2, so it's like Wario Land like 1.5 or something? Look, it doesn't make any sense. Virtual Boy Wario Land is such an interesting game. Not only is it the only game on the Virtual Boy that's actually worth playing for more than 10 seconds, it's also a game that went on to inspire so much. Virtual Boy Wario Land has this really cool feature where you can jump from where you are normally into the background and jump around there. That feature went on to be in so many games like the indie classic Mutant Mudds, but even in games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Yet, Nintendo may not acknowledge Virtual Boy Wario Land, but they're certainly inspired by its existence. It gave them a chance to be more experimental. It gave the Virtual Boy meaning to exist. Virtual Boy Wario Land is honestly a game that is worth playing. But you know what else is on the Virtual Boy? Mario Clash, of course! Mario Clash is just a different version of Mario Bros, the arcade game, but it was still quite a lot of fun, like so much fun. Honestly, Mario Clash is such an interesting interpretation of the original arcade classic. Like, not that it's that different, but the things it adds by just having this 3D plane make it a lot more fun, to be honest. But I feel like you'd still get mostly the same amount of enjoyment out of the original version of Mario Bros. But I feel like if you're a big fan of that arcade game or any arcade game like that, Mario Clash is a kind of unique experience that I think everyone should check out. But there's one other Mario game on the Virtual Boy, one that actually started a generation of Mario games. But what is it? What is the game I'm talking about? It's goddamn Mario's Tennis. No, not Mario Tennis. That's a game on the Nintendo 64 and Game Boy Color. Mario's Tennis, with the S at the end, is a Virtual Boy game that is just tennis. Like, more than the other games in the series. The whole point of Mario's Tennis on the Virtual Boy, though, is that the ball could hit you in the face. Because the Virtual Boy is virtual reality. Kinda. So I guess it's kinda cool. But literally every other game in the series is better, so just play those ones. But Mario spin-offs are what make the Mario franchise so big, so well known. A lot of people's first introduction to the Mario series wasn't always the classic platformers. Sometimes it was Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, or even Mario Golf. Mario Golf is a classic Mario spin-off spanning so many entries, all beginning on the Nintendo 64 with Mario Golf. Then of course there was the port of it to the Game Boy Color, also named Mario Golf. Then there was the GameCube entry, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, and its portable counterpart, Mario Golf Advanced Tour. Then there was a bit of a break, and then we got to Mario Golf World Tour on the Nintendo 3DS, and then of course Mario Golf Super Rush on the Nintendo Switch. But there happens to be one that I didn't mention. And no, it isn't NES Golf. Were you not listening to the beginning of the video where I said I wasn't going to be talking about NES Golf? That's one of the ones I'm not talking about. Use your ears next time. The one we're actually talking about is Mobile Golf for the Game Boy Color. The difference between Mobile Golf and Mario Golf is that Mobile Golf is made for an accessory for the Game Boy Color, the Mobile Adapter GP. This allowed games to connect to mobile phones, making Mobile Golf being able to connect to the internet to make other players play the game together. Now Mobile Golf at the end of the day is just Mario Golf with the Game Boy Color, but it has a few differences, with the biggest one being that the main characters are a bunch of humans. Ken, Napple, Thread, and Lisa are the players you're following, but there's of course other unlockable characters like Bean, Rosary, Powit, Bird, Grace, Kid, Tiny, and Jean. And it's just a lot of fun. But if you connect it to the mobile adapter, you get 4 more characters, and you may have heard of these ones. You can unlock Mario, Princess Peach, Yoshi, and Foreman Spike. Foreman Spike is the main character from Wrecking Crew. I have no idea why they picked Foreman Spike out of all people. Mobile Golf is worth checking out, but you may as well check the English translation that's been done by fans, as this one's also a Japanese exclusive. But those sports games weren't the only Mario spin-offs that existed. Oh no, it wasn't even the first Mario spin-offs that I really played that much. Some of the first Mario games I played were... I was very disappointed when I found out that Mario is Missing isn't a 2D platformer all about saving Mario playing as Luigi, where you go on fun little adventures like any other Mario game, and instead tries to teach me about the world. And then the same thing happened with Mario's Time Machine. That seemed like such a cool concept, but they wanted to teach me about the world again. Mario is Missing and Mario's Time Machine are 2 entertainment games mainly for the NES, SNES, and PC. All 3 versions of both games are very different from each other. Looking at Mario is Missing specifically, all 3 versions have the same concept. Luigi goes through a city with Yoshi trying to discover certain things about the geography and history and all that of the world. It's really boring to be honest, but the only semi-interesting thing is seeing Yoshi appear on the NES. Of course, it isn't the only game that he appears in on the NES, there's also Yoshi and Yoshi's Cookie, but it's interesting seeing a character from the SNES era of Mario on the console before it. This of course happens with Wario too in Wario's Woods, that's also on the NES, but it's just interesting that Nintendo was really into these cross-platform games. But those games also coming to PC/DOS make it far more interesting. Nintendo very famously doesn't let their games come to other places other than Nintendo consoles, let alone PC, but back in the 90s? I guess they were a bit more relaxed on that. Of course, none of the main Mario games ever made it to PC. The closest was Super Mario Bros. Special that I talked about earlier, but even then, that was sort of its own game. Mario is Missing and Mario's Time Machine weren't developed by Nintendo though, so it's not really a case of Nintendo putting their games on PC, it's just someone who has the license to Mario putting the games on PC. I mean, these games have so little to do with Mario, it's not even funny, but they just happen to star Mario. But I guess if you're looking to learn about the history of the world with a little Mario flair, then there you go. But there's also another whole trilogy of games called Mario's Early Years. There's Mario's Early Years Fun with Numbers, Fun with Letters, and Preschool Fun. These games were released both on PC/DOS and the SNES. I actually grew up playing the SNES versions. I'm pretty sure I had the PC versions too, but I really just played the SNES versions of the game. I don't remember much from it. I happened to grow up in a time where these edutainment games were just like on the way out in 2010, because from 2011 onwards an iPad was thrown in my face every 10 seconds instead of Math Circus for PC, but when I went to replay these games, I remember some of the things that happened. But look, these games just aren't good. They really aren't. They're some of the most boring games of all time. But you want even more explicit teaching games starring Mario? Well, do I have the games for you?
I'm going to fly for you.
Oh god. Mario Teaches Typing and Mario Teaches Typing 2 are 2 games all about teaching you how to type, and they are some of the most boring games of all time. Mario Teaches Typing is very famously the first game that Charles Martinet plays Mario in, although he only appears in the CD-ROM version of the game, but it's still not all that great. The game has multiple modes, from just typing a letter at a time to words at a time to entire sentences talking about George Washington. Mario Teaches Typing really just teaches you typing. And of course, these games were exclusive to PC. Obviously, I don't know how they'd bring Mario Teaches Typing to the SNES or Nintendo 64. Or Virtual Boy, I guess. But there was also a few other Mario games brought to PC, like Mario's Game Gallery, a collection of fun little board games that you play with Mario, who's again voiced by Charles Martinet, but there's also this other classic called Super Mario Bros. And Friends When I Grow Up, all about colouring some pictures in. That's the best one, clearly. But there's actually one other game all about using your creativity with Mario. There's I Am a Teacher's Super Mario Sweater. I couldn't figure out how to get this one to work past the title screen, but you basically learn how to knit. There's also Mario Family for the Game Boy Color, but that's like practically the same thing, except you connect a sewing machine to the Game Boy Color, obviously. But even after all of those Mario games, I think we really need to take it back and see where Mario as a concept came from. And that was of course the arcade game Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong of course spawned many sequels, but what were they exactly? Well, after Donkey Kong of course it was Donkey Kong Jr. Math. Yeah, we're not done with the edutainment games. Donkey Kong Jr. Math. It's math, but with Donkey Kong Jr. But after Donkey Kong Jr., the normal version, there was Donkey Kong 3. But didn't it ever confuse you that there was no Donkey Kong 2? Well, obviously Donkey Kong Jr. is Donkey Kong 2. They just called it something different for the second one. No? There's no possible way there's actually a game out there called Donkey Kong 2. Is there? Well, fun fact, there is! Donkey Kong 2 is actually exclusively on the Game & Watch. But it's just Donkey Kong Jr. Like, it might be called Donkey Kong 2, but it's just Donkey Kong Jr. It really just cements that Donkey Kong Jr. is just Donkey Kong 2. But after Donkey Kong 2, we got 3, and after 3, we had Hudson Soft return to the PC to make a PC version of Donkey Kong 3 that they say is a sequel to the original Donkey Kong 3, with a title that I am not even gonna bother to pronounce, but it's on screen and you can read it yourself. The game is more of a shooter as compared to the original Donkey Kong 3, with Stanley, the guy you play as, not being able to jump whatsoever. It has a bunch of different levels and is really, really cool. It's such an interesting sequel to Donkey Kong 3, and we really just need the return of Stanley the Bugman. But there's one more game. One more game that actually never even released, but there's a version out there that you can play right now that's in such a complete state that you may as well count it as an official Mario game. It's a game that was one thing, but turned into another. Diddy Kong Pilot. Developed as a sequel to Diddy Kong Racing on the Nintendo 64, Diddy Kong Pilot was developed by Rare for the Game Boy Advance. But there's actually two different versions of this game. There's a 2001 version of the game, a version that's only 65% complete, and then there's the 2003 version, a completely different, revamped, much more complete version of the game. And this version of the game would eventually become a Game Boy Advance game known as Banjo Pilot. As by this point, Rare had been purchased by Microsoft, and I guess Nintendo didn't want Rare making any original games for Nintendo anymore, only remakes of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy. But honestly, I had a lot of fun playing Diddy Kong Pilot. It's not perfect, considering the game isn't finished, but I really enjoyed playing through the stages, learning strategies. There's just so much to talk about with the two versions of Diddy Kong Pilot, and it's such an interesting thing playing a game that never actually came out, but also kinda came out, but as a different game. Mario is a franchise that includes so many games, from spin-offs to the classic platformers. But some of those games just get left behind, become forgotten, become obscure. But some of these games are still worth playing, even if you have to go out of your way to actually play the game in the first place. But then others are the original version of Super Mario Bros. Special. Do not make me play the original version of Super Mario Bros. Special!